Good morning. I am Anatoly Anatolisova, and this is Patriots Must Rise. Um, Today is going to be a little bit off topic, but I do some random shit on this podcast anyway. I want to I want to give you an update on um, on my journey to filing disability and give you some thoughts on the process. Because, contrary to what they say, the evidence that the process itself actually shows me is that their motives have nothing to do with actually helping the working man. The reason that I say this, okay, is number one, um, I wasn't the first. I wasn't the person that filed for my disability. My doctor did. All right, because my doctor realized that after the surgery, after a week after my surgery, um, I still had no real improvement of my hand. I was going to physical therapy. 6 months later, no improvement of my hand. They sent me to um, nerve specialists, did some tests. They signed me off as being irreparably healed, I think is the term, which basically means that my hand, my wrist, is going to be where it's at for the rest of my life. Here's the thing. I spent 2 years trying to find a niche that I could do within the confines of my specialty that did not further damage or stress my hand during the routine stresses of a workday. Over the process, I've hurt people because I'm trying to lift 50-gallon steel drums over my head, and the guy next to me is getting hit as I can't move my wrist back and can't control the drum. I had no fine dexterity, so the assembly line wasn't something that I could do. I have a background in law enforcement, and I have a master's degree in forensic science. But to perform any kind of crime scene investigation, you have to be able to utilize the tools. And I still am on call for the Washington State Patrol for this duty. But here's the thing. The way the laws are written to apply for disability, they don't want you working. They don't want you to try to actually find something where you're not a burden on the taxpayer. Okay? So while I am honestly searching for whatever the niche is that my limitations will still accommodate, the judge is afraid to set a precedent, because if he does, that would mean that Congress no longer has the as deep of pockets as they want to do bad shit to America. That's not opinion, that's just fact. The reason I say that is there wouldn't be a process. There wouldn't be a judge that I had to talk to if there was actually an account assigned to your social security number that only you could touch in the event that you got hurt on the job. You would just file and get the money that you put in all your life, and nobody would give a damn because it's your money. Just like unemployment. Supposedly you put into the system your entire life. They have you jump through all kinds of hoops to get this money that they claim isn't yours, in order to keep the fund going. These Ponzi schemes have to stop. This is how the federal government works. Okay? And I'm a government employee. That's a federal badge. I'm a government employee. I've protected the border. I have worked as detention enforcement. And I've worked behind enemy lines. But it really doesn't matter what my service record is, because these so-called accounts that you need permission to access, and sometimes literally you need an act of Congress in order to get into these accounts that are supposed to be yours. This is misrepresentation. If anybody actually did this to another citizen, if one common citizen did this to another citizen, it would be considered fraud, and that person would be convicted and probably put away for at least 20 years. But no, the U.S. government does it on a daily basis to millions of people. And they get away with it because they're politicians. This podcast is called Patriots Must Rise because I know that I'm not the only one that is tired of this fraud. I know that I'm not the only one that values freedom over my life. And I know that our children come first. And yet, states like Washington, where I live, have a mandatory state curriculum that sexualizes our kids. This is why public schools should never exist. And by the way, this is also why I don't take sponsors. Okay? I don't take sponsors because anybody that's handing you the money has this idea that you work for them. And that's exactly the case. We hand taxes to the federal government every day that we work. And we are supposed to have a say in how the government is run. We the people, a government for the people, run by the people. Well, hey, guess what? If that was a reality, January 6th, 2021 would have never been an issue. You can't trespass on property that you own because you paid the taxes to build it. You paid the taxes to maintain it. So what the fuck are these stupid idiots that think that they own America trying to do, other than put their say in another election by turning the zombie minds of the left and possibly others that are weaker on the right against the candidates that actually matter in this fight for freedom. It is so important that we reform everything that we have to come to this point where it gets bad enough that the general election for the presidency doesn't matter. Where we make the resolve to remove all of these people from office by force if necessary in order to reclaim our country. Okay? Now, in my struggles for disability, I did run into a slight irony, because this podcast is actually starting to reach people. The day before yesterday, I get called by a federal government contractor who I've worked with or in the capacity of Border Patrol, and I've never met this guy. I've never even heard of this guy, but I've seen the uniforms on the docks. I've seen the uniforms on the ships during the routine sweeps. And when he says the name of the company, my face lights up, and I put it on speaker for Susie to hear the conversation, because my wife and I have no secrets. I'm not an operator anymore. My background is more in law enforcement than it is in combat, and I want to keep it that way. So, and if it would have went toward that direction, I would have just flat out said no. I am never going to work for a company like Blackwater or any of those. So this guy starts talking. He introduces himself. He goes, I'm one of the lawyers that works for this company, and I'm also a retired Green Beret. As everybody that works for us has some kind of government service. Okay, cool. He starts telling me about the job, and I start laughing, thinking to myself, my God, I really need this, because I need some kind of income to support my family. But the irony that came into my head as this guy is talking, that God does not want me to leave the docks. And he said, are you willing to carry a weapon again? I go, I've never stopped. Says, good. Come in on Monday. Bring your paperwork. Bring in your DD-214, your passport, and we'll get things started. To make a long story short, God put a job that can provide for my family in play because of this podcast. And I'm very grateful. I since emailed the judge that was going to hear my case, and told him what was going on, and said I don't feel that I need to go through a disability. And he calls me and he says, I've been going over your records. I'm actually surprised that the insurance hasn't provided enough for you to live. Go. It provided enough for my injuries to be fixed, and barely enough for that. Goes, yeah. It is a real shame that the people that defend this country do not have the resources to actually get better after an injury on the job. He acknowledged that the system is broken. And he goes, I tell you what, I am going to keep your case pending. I'm going to move your hearing date to next November. And if a year from now you still feel that you can do the job that you've been offered, I want you to stand before me and tell me that in person. And he goes, it doesn't matter if you're working or not. The judge then said, and I've read your letters. Your letters are absolutely on the dot. The system is broken, and it is designed to basically keep the people that are leeching off the system. But it's supposed to be designed for people like you who have worked your entire life in service for this country, and not just trying to get a handout. He said, precedent has to be set, though. And I think an Army captain with an exemplary record who went on to defend our borders and transport prisoners as a U.S. Marshal could actually become the precedent to turn this around. He goes, but I gotta tell you, if this precedent actually gets moved forward, and I'm willing to do it, that means the Democrats have lost their voting bloc. I kind of giggle and say, yeah, I know. He also goes, I've seen your podcast, and I saw your letter to me, and that's part of the reason that we're having this conversation. Keep doing what you're doing. It's good to have a support. It is good to have a support. And I'm proud of the service that I've put in for this country. Yet at the same time, the system that is Social Security has been so corrupted that, and I'm including the VA too. Excuse me, have to feed my addiction. Somebody asked me if I get paid for product placement because all I drink is Coke. No, I don't get paid for product placement, but I probably should. Anyway, off of that rabbit trail. We have this We have this system in place for that FDR started during the Great Depression that actually put our country greater in debt than anything has ever put us in debt. And yet FDR is deemed a Democrat hero. The Democrats say that FDR pulled us out of a depression. No, it wasn't. It wasn't the New Deal that pulled us out of depression. It was the construction of infrastructure. It was the major projects that were going on during that time. And people being willing to work through the hard times. It was the highways being built, these major ports, the dams. All of these things were happening all at the same time, offering jobs to Americans. What's happening in Joe Biden's economy? Where are these jobs that he supposedly created? I look around and I see buildings boarded up with graffiti all over them that were once thriving businesses who offered jobs to kids and adults alike all over my neighborhood. Homeless up and down the street. And yet Bidenomics is working. Hey, look, guys. I can go on and on with this rant because I kind of get worked up. But I think you know where I'm going with this. The reform has to happen. And part of the problem that we have in America is that the people that are receiving these government benefits, and I hate using the term benefits because it's just an entitlement. Most of the time, these people have never earned a cent. Has to be changed. And because it has to be changed, the Democrats are scared because we actually have people running for office that are seeing that people are actually talking about the changes that are being demanded. One of my demands, and I hope and pray that other people were behind me, is that if you are on welfare, if you have received welfare for anything, or welfare assistance for anything, be it food stamps, housing, public education, and yes, the public education system is welfare. You should not have a right to vote in this country. The reason being, these programs have been designed specifically to keep you trapped and voting for the hand that feeds you, hence the Democrat Party. When I say that I do not accept sponsors on this channel, I mean it. And the reason that I do not accept sponsors on this channel, and never will, is because of the premise that anyone that is giving you the money that, or the money that you need, feels that they have a say in how your show is going to go, in how you're going to vote. Basically, these welfare recipients are afraid to bite the hand that feeds them. So they're not going to vote against the party. The party owns them. So I propose that if you have received welfare within the 4-year cycle of an election, anytime, for a week, for anything, you should be disqualified from voting. I challenge you as Americans to consider that whether or not, or if this ever was implemented, and especially if it was implemented during the election that Barack Obama got elected in, would Barack Obama have ever been elected? The studies that I have done, the studies that other people have done, have flat out said no. It is very unlikely that he would have ever been elected if it wasn't for the welfare class. All right, guys. I am Anatoly Anatolisova, and this is Patriots Must Rise. That's what I have for today. Please like, subscribe. There is a link in the description to donate to keep this podcast going. We are completely crowdfunded. Besides, it gets you in the fight. America needs reform, and we can't have an honest conversation on mainstream media because of the principles that I'm talking about today. So crowdfunding is very important to this podcast. For one thing, it gets you involved. For another, it shows me that you support what I'm doing. But more importantly, it says that you want skin in the game. It is easy to say that you have whatever rating YouTube might give you or Rumble might give you, or whether or not Rumble or YouTube pays you a stipend for whatever their podcast agreement might be. But when fathers and mothers of American families who are struggling, just like we are, decide to put in even $5, when that $5 might have meant the difference between clean clothes and having to go to work with stains on your shirt, it says volumes. And it tells me that Americans are hearing what I'm saying. So yes, please look at the link in the description and subscribe. Share your opinions in the voicemail in the same link. It might even be used on the podcast. I might actually use it as an idea for an episode. But most importantly, live free, die well, and love your neighbor as Christ has loved you. Until next time. Have a nice day.